everybody. Welcome back to Geeky Clinicians podcast. And as always, I am your chief geek, Dr. Deborah Dantzler. And I'm so happy that we have our amazing guest today, Dr. Dietra Hawkins, and can't wait to get into a great conversation with her. And I will let my fellow geeky clinicians introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Jacinta. I'm a lead geek and the lead clinician here at 3D.
Excellent. Excuse me. So today we have the privilege and honor of having Dr. Dietra D. Hawkins, Psy.D, a licensed clinical psychologist and the CEO and founder of Both End Partners. She is an executive coach, facilitator, researcher, speaker, and visionary, dedicated to equipping forward-thinking leaders with tools and strategies for creating transformative change. Dr. Dietra and her team work nationally and internationally with state and federal agencies, local governments, nonprofits, schools, behavioral health agencies, and recovery communities. She also serves as an assistant clinical professor at Yale University's Program for Recovery Health, where her research and work focus on systems change and community engagement. As an executive coach, Dr. Dietra empowers individuals and teams to navigate change, align their goals, and foster growth. Welcome, Dr. Dietra. We're so
Thank you
excited to
so
have you
much.
here.
I'm glad to be here. Yay. What a beautiful day, too.
Yes. So, Dr. Dietra, geeky clinicians, the reason we're even called geeky clinicians is because get really passionate about this work and we get really geeked up about this transformative change aspects of the work that we do. So I'm curious, I want to hear your clinical origin story.
Oh my, the clinical origin story. I love this. So first, I am so grateful to be on with both of you and to have this opportunity to share and connect and have a conversation. And as I'm thinking about my origin story, it actually started in my undergrad, where my very first psychology course was Black psychology. And only about 7 years ago did I realize the importance of being able to attend a college that offered Black psychology and what transformative experience it was for me as a first year student. So I always tell people when I took that class, I was not prepared. Um, I did not know what I was getting myself into. But I left inspired to understand that there were unique things that were important to people who look like me in this journey of wellness, and really helped to foster and what I would say gave me a way of being able to enter into the field where I was more creative. I really understood that I could take what I was learning and keep the parts that worked and leave the rest, which is one of my messages when I work with organizations now. Take what works, leave the rest, and not get like kind of too caught up on all of those different things. But went on from there to actually think I was going to do a degree in social work, only to have a number of many different twists and turns as I did actually quite a bit of research in social psych. And then said, oh my gosh, we have to be able to put people together after we've taken them apart.
Mm.
And so that led me to decide to get the most broad degree, which was clinical psychology. And I would say that I probably do the most diverse work as a clinical psychologist than, I didn't even know I was going to be, entering into. Where now, 20 plus years later, I'm doing executive coaching. I work with organizations, and one of my favorite things to do, which is what my dissertation research was on, is actually creating opportunities for people to come together, have a meal, talk about their stories and experiences specifically related to race and racism, and it not be a training, and that people use their forks to eat and not hurt each other. So, sort of an interesting place that I've brought all of those different components into. And I'll just highlight that I think one of the things I get to do that's unique to this work is be focused on understanding the impact of trauma and our cultural trauma, and also our resistance and resilience and the power and joy, especially as Black women, that we bring everywhere we go.
Awesome. And I can testify about the power and awesomeness of those dinners, which I want to hear much more about. And I know that you have some things that the community can link to, and possibly get their own opportunity to experience
Absolutely. Yeah.
those dinners. So we'll talk more about that. Jacinta, do you have a question?
Not right now. I am kind of in awe. Well, yeah, I do have a question. Because I'm going, Black psychology. Wait a minute. What did I miss? So I am wondering, who are the leaders of Black psychology? Who said that this should be a thing and
Yeah.
started Black psychology?
Well, it's really interesting you say that. So Robert Williams is considered for me, is considered the father of Black psychology, and that's who I got to take my course with at Washington University in St. Louis. And one of the pieces in his story was that we look at so psychologists, right, in terms of our area of expertise, we really started off in testing. And I think it's important when I go to organizations and other places, I think we have to acknowledge that psychology has often been used in a way that is very detrimental to people of color. Okay. And so he actually sought to find ways to recognize our own genius, and that there were things that we do as a culture and a community that is healing, that is protective, that is rooted in our ancestry, that is not just tied to having been enslaved, but actually to have been surviving that passage and all of the different things that kind of go into that. So there's a whole lot that's embedded in that in terms of recognizing that there is a Black psychology. There are lots of pieces of research that show, like, if you were to look in some of the work related to family systems, one of my favorite people years ago when I first got started, so before I even got into the field, someone told me, did you know that there's a psychologist that worked on The Cosby Show? Dr. Poussin.
Yeah.
And he was the one who helped all of these young white um, people who were going to be writing the scripts actually fit it to who to Black people, because we weren't in those spaces now. Now, fortunately, we're in Atlanta. We have, we got the studio. We got all kinds of things happening now that we did not have, then. But basically, just recognizing that there were people in the field for many years. Dr. White, Beverly Daniels. Uh, oh my God, Tandem. I'm like missing her name because I'm just like amazed that I've been able to work with her as well and hear and all the work that she's done in Atlanta. But we just have a number of resources within our community and often don't know who they are. But I can definitely share some of those. I think we featured those on uh, maybe a year ago or so on our website, of just sharing who some of these innovators are. But I like to mention that it was helpful to have taken Black psychology to know that psychologists worked in something like a show, right? And this again was, more than 20 years ago. And now we know that on many shows, there are psychologists who work on the sets because
Mhm.
Yeah.
it's important, right? When you're enacting things that are so emotional and those sorts of things that we have ways to give back and have a role. That's not just about, sitting and talking about problems, you know.
Yeah. I absolutely love that, Dr. Dietra. So many times we talk about things like, kind of like post-traumatic slave syndrome. We talk about like ACEs. We talk about the intergenerational trauma and the
Yes.
epigenetics of trauma and things like that. But we don't shift that focus and look at the resilience,
Yes.
the
Hmm.
strengths, the aspects of our that intergenerational resilience, really, right?
Yeah.
And the fact that we're here
That we're
and that
here.
our ancestors went through what they went through
Yeah.
it's just hands down that has to be this aspect of strength and
Hmm.
resilience and fortitude
Yes.
But
we have to have embodied and to not really to focus on that, to have a Black psychology to focus on those aspects and not just the downtrodden pain and
Oh,
and
yes.
negative aspects of that experience. So I love that. Thank you so much.
You're very
Yeah,
welcome.
yeah, yeah. So I'm curious to know, like, in your bio it talks about kind of working with all different types of agencies, government agencies, nonprofits, nationally and internationally. I
Hmm.
know there are a lot of clinicians out there who are watching this, maybe even newer clinicians that are coming up in the field that really want to hear, how did you get there, right?
Oh,
Like, how
wow.
did you build
Mhm.
the empire that is both end partners, right? And
That's great. That's a good question. And that's a good piece. I think it's interesting when we think about what our journeys, I don't know about how your journey is, but when I think about my journey, um, I really came into the field, right, just wanting to run a clinic, which I did, um, do a little research, which I was at the time. And in many ways, I sort of thought I had arrived, but I am also a very spiritual person. And what I say now is that God had a different plan for me. And although I do all of this work, I am actually like my happy place would be reading and like sharing and like kind of being in the background, but God has had a different plan for me. And so I have been asked, actually part of how it started, and I didn't start off being a consultant. We were doing some innovative things at the clinic that I was at, which was serving 99% African Americans in the community. And I was willing to take my license, right, and put it on the line and open it up to the community to do various events. So we had an internet cafe before internet was like a thing. We had a food service, like where people could come and apply and get food assistance. And one of my favorite activities is that we were actually doing these spoken word events in the community for the community that we hosted from the clinic. And so people heard about some of the work that I was doing, and there was a couple other things. We had peers, we were training them, they were running groups, anyway, I was just doing a lot of different things. And I say like doing a lot of different things, I was like opening the door so other people could do things more than anything else. And I think maybe that was what was unique and what we can do as like clinicians and therapists is that we can do our individual work, but we can also open doors.
yes.
And it was that opening of the doors that then led to people saying, "Can you come help us?" And that's literally it. I mean, I can remember, so I'm affiliated with the Yale Program for Recovery and Community Health. I helped start our training and consultation arm, and we were getting calls from people all over the world asking us to help them bring a more recovery focus initiative in. One of my favorite calls was from a group in China. I was like, okay,
Okay.
this is interesting, right? This is interesting. Uh, and just it's amazing because the truth is that resilience, health, wellness, people's desire to be well, to have meaning is universal,
Yes,
you know.
absolutely.
And so I would say that, in 2020, when all of us experienced COVID, and we had to learn to be like this in these little boxes, fortunately, I had actually been leading some workshops using Zoom prior to all of that. So we were able to pivot. And then that opened us up to work with organizations and communities in Canada, New Zealand, and all these other locations. So to other people, I would just encourage you to really get rooted in what you are called to do.
Mhm.
And then what I try to do is I look for where doors are open. And I know if I'm pushing too hard, then that means I'm not like that's not where I'm supposed to be. And when things open up, then that I know that's where I'm supposed to be. Which is also what I try to do when I mentor and coach other folks. And I have a lot of mentees and supporting in that, in that direction. Yeah, it's a
Awesome.
great question.
Jacinta, you have a question?
Um, yeah, you said that one of your passions is reading. What books would you recommend on Black psychology?
That's a great, yeah. I think if I were to have people start right now, one of my favorite books, and is not exactly Black psychology, but is Black psychology, is Sean Wright's The Four Pivots. And I'm saying that because although he is not a psychologist, he is really, to me, talking about, he has a program called Healing Centered Engagement. So it is about being trauma responsive in a sense, like it's going beyond being trauma informed. And it's also rooted in his own lived experience. So I love the work of Sean Ginwright. And I often tell people like that is a good place to get started in the four pivots. And one of those pivots that we all need to work on is moving from hustle to flow.
Oh gosh,
That
say
we
more. Oh, that sounds
have an
wonderful.
addiction to busyness.
Hmm.
Okay. And so it is really important that we figure some of those things out. And the other thing that he talks about is moving sort of from problem to possibility. And so rooted in, and maybe I'll take a quick aside and then come back to this.
Mhm.
Rooted in my own story, I was actually designated as a health disparities researcher. And that led me to be very depressed. We were doing some really great work, found some really important pieces, and then discovered that even though you discovered things that were working, maybe they would not continue to be funded. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's part of my lived experience, right? We were doing this work and then brought up, shared all of these pieces, and then we're told, yeah, our priorities have changed and we're not funding funding these programs anymore. And so I had to find another route. And I discovered a field in actually business, which is called appreciative inquiry, which is a sister to positive psychology. I'm saying all this stuff because at the time that I was in, this didn't exist. I couldn't get a degree in positive psychology. I couldn't get a degree in like all these different things. And so when I tell people what I see that's important about that in positive psychology, and then bringing this back to Sean Ginwright, is that very often in our culture, especially during the civil rights sort of movement, there tends to be an overemphasis on fighting. And while the struggle is real,
Mhm.
the words that we use can set us up to burnout.
Mm.
Okay. So we have to learn how to hold multiple truths at the same time. And so his understanding of moving into possibility is to me akin to an appreciative approach, which is saying, and what I like to say is that we have to talk about what is true. Those are the things that are hard, what is good,
Mhm.
and then what is possible.
Oh, yes.
Okay. So my work is always in that now because I've made a commitment to every group, every community that I ever go into. I'm going to leave you with something that helps. And one of those things that helps is learning to ask the question, what's true, what's good, what's possible.
Oh, that's so awesome. That's so wonderful. And so when you do the dinners, and tell us a little bit
Oh
more
yeah,
about
sure.
the dinners. I'm guessing you're using this appreciative inquiry and asking those questions, what's
It's so
true,
great.
what's good, and what's possible.
What's
And
possible.
as a possibilitarian, I love those three questions.
It's so smart. This is what's so funny. So as a practitioner, we do things without telling people what we're doing.
Mhm,
And so while I help design the questions that we engage in, what's often different about the dinners and the different experiences is that many people are used to only talking about the problems.
mhm,
Okay.
mhm,
And when you think about town halls, for example, people are avoiding wanting to go to a town hall because all you hear are people like shouting at each other and complaining, and there isn't really movement toward either really just sharing and listening and being vulnerable or actually moving toward action.
mhm,
So, um, one of the things that we do with the dinners, and my primary role with organizations in doing dinners, is helping to train the facilitators and helping to create the questions
mhm,
and the anchor for what the experience is like. Okay. And so that does include, for example, asking people, well, what's even brought you here? Just tell me your story of like how you have ended up here today, because a piece that took me a long time to appreciate about the dinners is that
mhm.
it takes courage to go to someone's home that you don't know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And okay, I mean, it took me a long time. I'm telling you, that data had to hit me over the head because I was just like, as a Black woman, I'm thinking, like, yeah, what? Like I have to do things all the time. But then really understanding the courage that it takes, right, to show
Mhm,
up authentically and then to tell your real story is
mhm.
really, really tremendous. And so I had the honor of working with the Human Relations Foundation, as it was called in Chicago back in the day. And Clarence Wood and Terry Johnson supported this work and have supported me over the years and continuing to talk about the Chicago dinner model, which brings these conversations together. And then I think you had an opportunity to be at one of the dinners where we
Yes.
had over 1,000 people participating all across the city of
Mhm.
Decatur, talking about race and racism.
It was amazing. It was such a phenomenal experience. And like you said, the bravery of the people to show up and the level of vulnerability we had to have to be able to stay in our frame and hold space for other people and not to be activated,
Yes.
but to just really lean in with genuine curiosity.
Mhm.
It was such an amazing and valuable experience that, yeah, it was wonderful.
And I'm grateful that we get to do those. And uh, there's something about food, right? That for
Yeah.
us, not just, I mean, and it goes across many cultures. Food is very healing. And so then the conversations that come along with it are healing. But then having questions that are rooted in a more appreciative direction where we're not just here to say, tell me what you think the problem is. Because most of the time we know what the problems are, but actually drawing people out to say, what is your experience? And then what do you think what would make a difference? Right? To ask that question, what would make a difference? What has ever made a difference? It helps to make it, helps to shift things a little bit.
Yeah. That's so wonderful. I love the model. And I think we had this briefly touched on this in a conversation. There is so much going on in our profession, in our field. As being a clinician, it doesn't matter if your letters are LPC, LCSW, if you're pre-licensed, if it's Psy.D, PhD, but if you are doing this human, emotion-laden
Yeah,
human work, there is a lot that happens for us as clinicians.
so true.
And to be able to have a dinner like that with appreciative inquiry just for clinicians,
Wouldn't that be
just
awesome?
to have clinicians come and talk about um, not only the challenges but their hopes for
Yeah.
the future of this profession,
Mhm.
and what that would look like, because it can be frustrating and stressful. There's some changes here that we're seeing that I don't know what that's going to mean for our
Right.
profession long term. I was just reading in one of
Mm.
the clinician groups about, we know that the headways and the almas and the talk spaces and, and so what does that mean for small private practices or group practices? And so, does this make you more of a clinician or less of a clinician? Or I don't know. I'm
Mm.
just rambling on now, so I'm going to stop talking. But I would love to see that somehow come to a fruition at some point. Geeky clinicians
Well,
dinner.
as you were talking, though, I think that this is an opportunity, and I would love it if people are going to add any comments to this of what are the questions that we could be asking, and where would they like to show up? Because, just to start off with, how important it would be to ask what brought you into the field and what's keeping you here. Like,
Yes.
just to have that as a conversation. And then I think the other piece that I would want to encourage all of us to be thinking about is that there has been a way, again, this is where Black psychology sort of has helped me. There has been a way that the dominant medical model has prevented us from advocating for ourselves and for people really understanding the value of what we do. Okay.
Yes.
Not only for other people, but even for us, right?
Hmm.
Like how much we struggle with even asking people to pay us for what we are offering and providing. So I would just say that I think these are important conversations for us to be having. And as I have been growing and learning how to run a business and all of those other kind of components, my hope for other clinicians is that we start to really value what we offer and we don't just accept that we
Hmm.
need to be poor, and
Hmm.
not have a voice in the decisions that are being made, and that really we need to center both ourselves and our expertise. It's one of the things I value from another one of my mentors, who's Dr. Arthur Evans at the American Psychological Association, who really encourages all of us, as you were
Hmm.
just saying, all of us to take, pride in what we do and value in what we do, because it to me it's one of the missing pieces in our culture, and we are kind of like we are those grandparents that
Hmm.
many people don't have in their families anymore.
Hmm. Yes, absolutely. And the idea of us taking that pride, ownership, and value of what we do, and is that in alignment or opposition to these big box tech companies, right? And so yeah, they pay more perhaps, but where's the focus on the client and the clinical? I don't
Mhm.
know. I think it would be something that would be interesting to have in the discussion.
I think so. And honestly, that's why the company of company's name is both and,
Hmm.
because I think that too often we need to find a way to bring the things that are like over here and look over here. Like we can't just do the, one or the other.
Hmm.
Um, and it's sort of like some of the other policies and programs that have been passed, happened in the past. the idea of it is really great. The implementation is where things break down. And so
Yeah.
we could do more to be actively involved in that.
Yes. Yes. Excellent. Jacinta?
Yeah.
Um, the program that you talked about earlier, where you were doing, I'm a former spoken word artist. So
Ooh.
the program that you were talking about with the spoken word, is that still going on?
You know, I have to be honest, I am not there anymore. So what has happened is that it has evolved. So many things happened after COVID, right? That, sort of ended some of that. But what has happened is that there's been a focus on helping organizations and people tell their stories in various creative, artistic ways,
Mhm.
and then also have it be published. So I hope that you're finding ways to do that, and it's very exciting that that's a piece that you bring to the table.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, that'd be neat. And I honestly, I like to help bring ideas in. So I've been in Georgia now quite a long time. But I spent 10 years in Connecticut. And so it's interesting to be talking about some of the pieces. And also the there are there are things that we can do that are innovative and creative, and that there's a lot of healing that comes from that.
Mhm.
So that's where I see those possibilities. I'm not as directly related to that part, but I have helped. Like, they were sitting around the other day looking for people to submit their poetry to be published.
Very
Awesome.
good.
So, Dr. Dietrich, some of the questions we ask in the Geeky Clinicians podcast are,
Mhm.
what have been what has been some of your biggest challenges on your clinical journey? And what have been the biggest wins or successes on your clinical journey?
Hmm. I definitely would say that one of the biggest challenges early in my career, and maybe some people still experience this, is having supervisors and other folks who didn't understand what it meant to be a clinician of color, and what different things, kind of came from that. Um, in settings in places where I was like the first often. And so would, it was just a lot. It was a lot, right?
Uh,
I still saw that as a real honor. Um, but that's what I would say was my biggest challenge, is that there's still so few of us. And especially in different settings, but we need more clinicians, period, just across the board. Um, and then I would say my biggest honor, I think, um, has been the work I've been able to do to support people in the recovery movement.
mm-hmm.
I recently just got an award actually for a group that I work with in New Jersey for innovation and leadership. I work with their board for about 4 years since COVID to really embed sort of this appreciative lens, understand, and for them to be able to have the courageous conversations around diversity, inclusion, equity, healing, and then the intersections of that and the hope of recovery. And so I love that. And I feel like the work we do on the clinical side of things is and should be complementary to the work of peers and peer support. And too often in sort of the way things play out, there's a lot of tension there. I don't have tension there, and so that is where I am probably, the biggest champion I could be for having that be.
So what is next for both Inc.?
Well, thank you for that question. We are, as an organization, we work to equip leaders to flip questions, problems into solutions. And one of the things that we are starting to do more of is actually support more organizations and communities, and especially conferences, with doing a dinner at the beginning of their event, to help bring and address, really this epidemic of loneliness and connection that people need. So we will be pushing forward that. I am also continuing to support, we continue to look for people who want to be trained to be facilitators so that they can have these courageous conversations. And we offer opportunities for people to get CEs in being a transformational leader.
All right. The last question is a question that we kind of ask to all of our guests, and it is, what are your best hopes for our industry?
I'll just reemphasize that I believe that the kind of work that we do, the hard work that we do, um, we have to find a way to value it even more for ourselves and then for others. And I think that in this particular time, and even coming out of COVID, it has said, we know that what we do is just so very important to everyone, and we don't need people to wait until they're in crisis, right? To
Yeah.
to get the kind of support that we offer. So I hope that our field will continue to see its value, and will also see that we have value in many different kinds of ways, that we don't just sit and talk with someone, face to face, but that we can also help our industries like the media tell stories about what is true, good, and possible, and not just focus on, the latest thing that is the most alarming, because we really need to have people, we need as a world, I think, to help get everybody's regulations a little bit better. We all need to
Yes.
have a lot more peace. So that would be my biggest hope. And I know those are big hopes, but I also know there are things that we can do.
And absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us on the Geeky Clinician podcast.
Well, thank you for inviting me. And I was going to share, like, I have the old copy of the Black Psychology, like, this is the Bible, like, our Bible or whatever. But just to know, like, there are resources out there for people who want to continue to learn or go back to and relearn.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. All
Oh.
right. Well, thank you so much. And do you want, um, I'd like to have anybody who would like to like, subscribe, share. And if you subscribe, then you will be notified when your episode airs.
I love it. Have a great day.
All right. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.